I'm going to talk basically about not the future hydrocarbon provinces, but also future hydrocarbon prospects. So that I will first talk about prospects, kind of basically general concepts, and then I'll go into provinces, and I'll deal with potential in known hydrocarbon provinces, in poorly explored basins, and then in the undrilled frontier areas. As many of you will know, over 4 billion barrels of oil have already been produced in Trinidad and Tobago. Most of it is by primary recovery, and it's split. A lot of it on land, a lot of it off the East Coast, and the rest in the Gulf Coast province. Let's look at some sort of general concepts. If we look at source rock occurrence and distribution, we could look at source rock maturation, look at reservoirs, and look at one oil alteration process, which is evaporative fractionation. These generally can give us clues as to where future hydrocarbon discoveries can be made. This one, for instance, is a map which shows the pristine phytane ratio of the source rock, and basically what it indicates is that the dark blue has high pristine phytane ratios, indicating high terrestrial input, and that is basically the explanation for why there's a predominance of gas and condensate in the southeast coast marine area and in the central area onshore South Trinidad. As you can see, it's a wide data set that we're working with, covering virtually every oil and gas condensate field in the entire country. So there's no question of the validity of what we're talking about here. So that we can assume that in the areas where pristine phytane ratio is 2 or less, we're going to see predominance of oil from a pure marine source. Now, if we look at source rock maturation, I'm sorry, I'm going back. Source rock maturation first took place with the oblique collision in the formation of the 4 deep basins, and there's also a series of sequential kitchens forming as the oblique collision continued and progressed to the east, southeast. There was also, and that's another story I'll come to in a bit, remigration later on, which resulted in the evaporative fractionation. Now, there's another area to the east coast where the source rock maturation was driven by a different process than the oblique collision. It was driven by the successive depositors, and we got the sequential kitchens in those depositors. Evaporative fractionation occurs when previously reservoir oil is migrated because of late tectonics into younger reservoirs and later reservoirs. And what happens is the aromatics and the lighter ends migrate further and higher up, so that what you end up with is what you see here. This is the previously reservoir oil, and that's the end product of evaporative fractionation. The residual oil loses all the aromatic ends, which go up to the top. So this is called a residual oil. These are called fractionated oils or fractionated condensate. And we have found that this is prevalent in Trinidad in many of the reservoirs, and then that can give us clues, because if we see fractionated oil or a condensate, then we know that there's got to be residual oil dumping. Okay? So that while geochemistry has traditionally been used in the broad early exploration efforts, it can also be used here in a late loop in trying to determine the potential for deeper pool accumulations. Okay, so let's look now First are the known petroleum provinces. If we look at the southern basin, the map at the bottom is a map of the structure contours on the southern basin, which is a piggyback basin, which sits within the fold and thrust belt. And then we look above it at the Herrera, which is one of the sand members within the Superior Formation, within that fold and thrust belt. These black lines up here show the northern boundary of the Herrera and the southern boundary of the Herrera sands, shale outs to the north and south respectively. If you look in this area here, there are many large Herrera accumulations, and basically I'm saying many more to come. Why am I saying that? If you look down to the south, here, sorry, at the bottom of the map, there are very few young fields. What that's telling us, and this is in spite of the fact that the Cretaceous source rock is thick, it is within the oil window, and has been known to generate a lot of oil. So where is the oil? It has not leaked, and it is not up shallow, therefore it's got to be trapped within the Herrera in this portion of the fold and thrust belt. A similar story occurs in the western portion onshore of the southwest peninsula and the near shore. If you look here, the Los Bajos Fault has acted as a major migration pathway, major remigration pathway, where oil will have been leaked from deep Herrera accumulations up into the shallow Cruz Forest and Monarch. This is a cross section through Barrack field, and again you can see the prevalence of evaporative fractionation. That's a residual oil down here. That's 22 degrees API and waxy. That's a characteristic of a residual oil. It's waxy and heavy. Fractionated oil, light oil, it will be light, it will be 40 plus API gravity. If it's a condensate, it will be 50 to 60 API. And it will be enriched in aromatics, as it is here. And then this is also fractionated oil, but it's biodegraded, so it's heavy. It's mixed with later migrating condensate and biodegraded again, but that's another story. So let's start looking at that fold and thrust belt and start from the west now, the Soldado area, except southwest Soldado. All of the oils we analyze, and we've analyzed oils from all oil fields and all condensate fields throughout the country. They are evaporatively fractionated, and many were biodegraded and mixed with later migrating condensate. What that means is that there must be residual oils deeper. So are we saying that deeper drilling will find those residual oils? In southwest Soldado, there's evidence of multiple migration pathways. The cruise oils we analyzed were whole oils, but there's a well, Soldado 670, which went deep and found heavy oil in Superior Herrera 8 reservoirs, which were tight, unfortunately, and they were probably waxy residual oils, which means that if you're having waxy residual oils in one area and whole oils in another area, it's telling you that you have multiple migration pathways. So you have fault separation, so that there is still significant potential for deeper accumulations within the southwest Soldado area. Southwest Peninsula, onshore, near shore. Caracas and Bonas, their oils were fractionated and later mixed with migrating condensate. And also, I think you heard Jim Pindell saying it this morning, in passing, that in the mud volcanoes on the south coast, Galfa Point and Isla Point, they are expelling rocks of Herrera age. What he didn't say is we have done it. These rocks are saturated with oil. We analyze the oils, and they are residual oils, which were originally about 30 degrees API, so we know it's there. And it's just a question of finding the correct structures. And in ACD4 and a recently drilled well FRM1, they, both wells went only to Lower Cruz Lengua and found very light oil, which we are, and maybe condensate, which we are interpreting as fractionated condensate from deeper residual oils. So that we expect to find deeper oils in the Southwest Peninsula, in residual oils at the Herrera level, and fractionated oils and condensates at Lower Cruz and Lengua level. And if it's shallow, of course, it can be evaluated like this. In the rest of the Southern Basin, what you're looking at here is Cruz, Forest, and Monarch Fair getting progressively younger. As you can see, this oil, this Los Bavos fault, acts as a remigration pathway. Most of the remigrated oil is trapped here. Some is leaked up into the forest, and a lot less is leaked up here into the Monarch Fair. What we're seeing here in the Monarch Fair, that's obviously a different migration pathway from the Los Bavos fault. We've analyzed a lot of the oils in this area, and many were fractionated and altered by biodegradation. But the fact that they've fractionated means that we can postulate that there has to be deeper residual oils present. If we go back to the eastern Southern Basin, like I said, there are very few fields in this area of Pliocene and younger age. We know the source rock is present in Tier 1 and the oil window, and very rich. And it's indicating to us that there are many more fields to be found within this eastern fold and thrust belt. And I think the Ministry of Energy, who is having a big round coming up in December, should pay me a commission for saying this. So we are saying that there's a lot of oil to be found there still. For instance, if we look at the central block, two discoveries we made recently. One was Carapal Ridge and the other one was Baraka. And there was also a discovery further to the west. The Saunders well discovered oil, which was actually a whole oil. The Carapal Ridge and Baraka condensates are fractionated condensates, very light, very depleted in the waxy ends. So that it indicates, again, like Southwest Soldado, there's cross-fault separation and there's multiple migration pathways, but that the low Barak and the Carapal Ridge, there will be, you could expect to find deeper residual oils. You're also seeing multiple thrust sheets. This is a seismic section from one of the old Exxon Southern Basin Consortium lines, and you can see multiple thrust sheets. So I would absolutely recommend deeper drilling in this area. Let's look now at the central range transpressor zone. The Angostura field is lower Ligocene. It's a large gas field with a thin oil leg. It's a Ligocene turbidite reservoir. It's a complex structure. And that's the first discovery that has been made along the central range transpressor zone trend, which is within the fold and thrust belt, but it's deformed, of course, by the late transgression movement. East-west movement here translates into transgression in this area, all the way along here, coming up to this general area. So I would expect, and I think Jim was saying something similar this morning, we will be seeing sands of lower Ligocene in the area to the northeast and to the southwest onshore. We're still in known petroleum provinces, so let's look at the East Coast marine area. I'm saying there's potential for oil and gas condensate. Basically, think of this area as This whole thing is a modern analog of what has been happening with this opening collision of our law. This is a major upthrusted zone. This is the forehand uplift area, and that's your 40 basin, which extends all the way back into Venezuela. This, of course, is now filled in. That's your shelf area, and that's your 40 basin going up in that direction. So you're going to find oil within the tertiary sediments, within the 40 basin. I'm still talking about non-petroleum provinces. I'm not into Joseph belt yet, that will come after. You'll also find it in fractured source rocks, the Cretaceous argillites, wherever it's shallow enough for you to access it by the drill bit, onshore or offshore. Columbus Basin gas condensate fields are all fractionated condensates. And we predicted back in 1989 that before any well went deep into the gas condensate fields, that you would find black oil below. I know that there's a predominance of, or there's a mixing, there's tertiary, there's terrestrial material, but it does not preclude the presence of oil, and it's going to be there. All the fields which have been drilled deep successfully have found the oil there. Mahogany, Angustia, Ibis. So that the ones which have not yet drilled deep and which have found these fractionated condensates, we say again that you will find black oil. Maybe thin legs, but black oil below. We know they're very large oil fields, Tipwe and Saman, but there are also smaller fields like Galeota and Mora. And the Galeota trend I absolutely love. But they feel there's a lot more oil to be found there, all along the southern flank of that thrust zone, as well as in the Mora trend down to the south. So there continues to be potential for oil. In the Galeota trend, what they found was they found oil and then gas below. What that implies is they went through a thrust and got into another migration pathway. So below the gas and condensate, I would expect to find somewhere residual oil which is feeding by fractionation. Okay. North Coast Marine area, we expect to find more along the Patao High, more gas fields with very minor condensate. Let's go to the poorly explored basins. Extreme south in the Gulf of Paria, Pullabad Basin. Actually, we're now getting into the extreme south of the Northern Basin, south of the Pullabad itself, or just on the fringes. There are large, heavy oil accumulations, and we are seeing light oil. We're seeing light oil below, which is the residual oil, probably in the river age, and we expect to find more of that. We also expect to find residual oil where the mahogany field, the
Manikou
fields like Soldado and North Marine, we expect to find residual oils below the current Pliocene, Upper Miocene, I suppose. In the main basin, there's a Brasso source only, there's no Cretaceous source, so there's potential for shallow gas and condensate, probably smaller fields. South Coast Marine area, now we're looking at poorly explored basins. There are two small gas condensate discoveries. The key is that there's condensate. And once there's condensate, we know that condensate is not over mature, so that we will expect to find oil below the condensate. So don't give up yet on the area south of that frontal thrust. North Coast Marine area, Tobago Trough, Tobago Basin, whatever you want to call it. And I'm presenting a paper tomorrow which goes into a little bit more detail on it. We analyze the condensate from the North Coast Marine area, which says that there's a thermogenic source, and we'll elaborate on that tomorrow. But basically, we can expect oil and gas with condensate on both flanks of the Caracolita subbasin, which is the southwestern extremity of the Tobago Trough. Espinography. we have long postulated the Espino gravel must come eastwards into Trinidad. We say that the evaporites, Cuba Marine evaporites, probably evaporites from the original Jurassic, and it's not Lower Cretaceous, and it's remigrated. It's probably a lacunous salt sheet that's now interbedded with the Lower Cretaceous, and people are saying Lower Cretaceous. It's probably upper middle Jurassic. So you can look below the salt sheet for salt hydrocarbons, probably deep enough that it might be in the gas window. Deep and ultra deep waters, North Coast Marine area. Sorry, East Coast Marine area. We looked at three potential analogs. One is, of course, the Guyana-Suriname Basin, and then the Tamil Basin associated with the transfer margin offshore Ghana, and Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea. And all three have a common early history, thin rift, drift, passive margin. But then the difference is, and I'll blow through this, this is the offshore Ghana and then offshore Suriname. The difference is the deltaic deposition that we have, that they don't have, but that's there in the Niger Delta. And that's where our best analog is. That's what the Niger Delta looks like in cross-section. And there are, of course, two major deep water discoveries, the Zafiro field and the Alba complex. Interestingly, both are evaporatively fractionated hydrocarbons. If you look at our east-west area, you see an identical picture to the Niger Delta. What is that telling us? We look at the seismic lines, and you can see in the toe thrust belt, you can see where Cretaceous, here, these faults go down into the Cretaceous, so there is access to the source rock. We know the reservoirs are there. And that's the detail, so you can see it a little bit better. And there is live oil in piston cores. So basically, we expect oil and fractionated gas and condensates in tertiary reservoirs. You can also expect oil in deep Mesozoic reservoirs. It will be either whole oil or residual oil. How much? Where will the tertiary sands be found? This is a paper that was published last month in ABG Bulletin by Leslie Wood and her co-workers. They're showing one northern depot center and one southern depot center. This one, interestingly, brings sands into the toe and thrust belt. So that I don't think we need to worry about the reservoirs. So, how much are we going to find? When are we going to find it? In the short term, 1 to 2 years, more oil and gas condensate in the known producing areas. Medium term, more oil and gas condensate in poorly explored areas. And then in the longer term, in the southeastern flank of the Tobago Basin Trough and the ultra deep waters of the East Coast Marine area. How much are we going to find? A lot. So keep looking, folks. 3 billion barrels is out there to be found. Thank you very much. Sorry I've run over time, Chairman, but you started late, so.